Hello, everybody.
Hi, Gilda.
My name is Gilda Ross. I'm the Glenbard Student and Community Projects Coordinator. I'm delighted you could join us for this important Glenbard Parent Series program. This is the 28th year of the Glenbard Parent Series. It's our mission to inspire, connect, and engage with families around the positive development of youth. We're going in a little different direction, and I'm so excited about the material and the information and the resources that will be shared with you. As you know, the Glenbard Parent Series is open to everyone. We encourage you to let your friends and family around the country or across the street, let them know that they are welcome. And our ask of everybody is to please share the resource so that even more people become aware of the Glenbard Parent Series. Programs like this are shared on the Glenbard Parent Series YouTube, so take a look at that for past programmings and this program as well. I'd like to tell you very quickly about what's coming up. There are two important programs this month that I know you'll want to circle your calendar. Returning to the Glenbard Parent Series is Dr. Andrew Solomon. If anyone that you know or love or care about struggles with depression or doesn't understand depression, Andrew Solomon will present a true understanding. His talk is an anatomy of depression. He writes about his own experience. Noonday Demon is the important of his Pulitzer Prize winning finalist book. He is eloquent, he is informative, and it's a program not to be missed next Wednesday at 7 p.m. The following week, we are bringing back Michelle Garcia Winner. She is an expert in social skills on the whole spectrum of students who struggle with social skills. She another expert in the field. So she'll be speaking on the 25th at noon at 7 p.m. And then kicking off Black History Month, Zaretta Hammond. She spoke to all Glenbard teachers. She will be talking to the community, motivating, supporting, and expanding the capacity of all students. Another very, very special opportunity. So lots going on, and check the website for the links and come back. It is my honor to introduce the moderator who will be taking over tonight. His name is Dr. Paul Corona. He is a leadership development professor and director in the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University, where his teaching and coaching ratings average 97 out of 100. He helps leaders find true fulfillment in addition to improving their performance. During his 37-year career, Paul has transformed himself from a businessman into an educator. He previously held a variety of leadership roles in Fortune 500 companies, a Big Four accounting and consulting firm, and major research universities. As a leading global coach award winner, Paul was considered for the first Thinkers 50 Marshall Goldsmith Coaching and Mentoring Award. He also founded the award-winning Lee's 3 Healthy Habits, which helps motivated professionals build stronger relationships and achieve greater happiness. He's also the author of The Wisdom of Walk-Ons, 7 Winning Strategies for College, Business, and Life. He would want you to know that he is also a husband, a parent, and a friend. And I am proud to introduce my friend, Paul Corona. Take it away, Paul.
Gilda, thank you so much for your kind introduction. I'm honored to be with you, and I always love to work with you. What you do, not only for local communities, but all of Chicagoland and the U.S., allow me to thank you on behalf of everybody who's with us tonight. And I am not only honored, as I'm saying, but I'm so particularly excited to be with everybody tonight because we're going to cover a topic that's been near and dear to my heart ever since I was in high school. So we're talking about, 40 years. And it is how to get good jobs and how to have good careers. And we are so lucky that we are joined by 2 local experts who I'd like to introduce to you just briefly now and then tell you a little bit more about them later. First, Chris Fay with the College of DuPage, as you know, is part of an institution that is one of the largest community colleges in the country with significant impact in Chicagoland and beyond. Also, Mark Presnell with Northwestern University is in charge of career advancement for one of the largest and most recognized, highly ranked universities in the world. So I want to thank Chris and Mark. We know how busy you are day and night, and we're so grateful that you've carved out a little time in your schedule to be with us tonight and share your insights and share your guidelines. Thank you. Now, what I'd like to do is talk with our audience and just let you know very quickly how we'd like you to engage. Because the other reason why I'm excited tonight is we're going to be able to have a conversation, not only listen to expert lectures. After we hear from Chris and Mark, then we all get to talk together. So please get your questions ready, get your comments ready, and all you have to do is type them in the Q&A box on your screen, and you can activate that by clicking the icon at the bottom. You won't be on camera, we won't listen to you. All you have to do is type your questions, and then I'll take it from there and integrate them into our panel conversation, okay? So before we dive in, I'd like to tell you a little bit more about Chris and then Mark. Chris Fay serves as Dean of Business and Applied Technology at the College of DuPage, where she has held various roles over the past 25 years, working directly with students, faculty, and local employers. The academic programs in her division have advisory councils to maintain strong connections with industry professionals and support employment pipelines. Chris has taught business, entrepreneurship, and marketing courses and launched the Emerging Entrepreneurs Program to pair students interested in business ownership with supportive mentors and resources. She was part of the team that built Innovation DuPage and has served on the board of directors since its inception. Chris is a passionate advocate for community colleges and the endless ways they positively impact people's lives. Welcome again, Chris. Mark Presnell is the executive director of Northwestern Career Advancement at Northwestern University. He possesses over 25 years of experience in career services as well. Before joining Northwestern in 2013, Mark was the director of Career Center at Johns Hopkins University. In addition, he has worked in various capacities in career services at the University of Rochester, the University of Virginia School of Architecture, and the University of Kansas. Mark received his PhD in counseling psychology from the University of Kansas and his Bachelor of Arts from Purdue University. Mark, again, welcome. Thank you. And if you're doing the quick math with me, we got over 50 years of experience and expertise and practical guidance that we can tap into today. So again, audience, please don't be shy. Start typing your questions in whenever you are ready. And we are so fortunate to start us off with questions to have two of our colleagues who are in our high schools in Chicagoland. Let's first go to Juliana, who's going to start us off with a question on camera. Juliana, welcome and thank you for being with us. Juliana, I think you might be on mute.
Sorry, I was on mute.
All good.
Hi. My name is Juliana, and I'm a senior at Glenbard East High School. You've mentioned that the most important skills to have in a fast-changing job market are problem solving, analytical skills, teamwork, and communication. How can we best learn those skills?
What a great question. Thanks, Juliana. Would love to hear from both experts. Chris, would you be kind enough to start us off?
Absolutely. You know, those are skills, Juliana, that, well, okay, I'll speak for Mark and myself and Paul. When we were younger, more typically, high school students had jobs. These days, not as many do. You're busy with your school activities. You're busy with your extracurricular activities. So you don't always get that opportunity to practice and build those skills. So in addition to what you can learn as part of a sports team, what you can learn interacting with all your teachers, what you can learn in maybe a student club, perhaps you've got a leadership role in that club. We also encourage students, certainly at the high school level, to do what we call kind of some experiential education. And that is to maybe participate in a volunteer activity in your community, maybe in your house of worship, where you're going to have the opportunity to interact with other people that you may not meet on a daily basis. Also, if there's an opportunity for an internship, that's a great way to practice that. But consider your everyday life and how you take in lots of information. And sometimes you are in situations where you have to problem solve. Maybe you're even doing a group project with fellow students. And, you know, I think of that as a double blessing. Not only may you be in a group with some students you might rather not be in a group with, but you still have to get the work done. So you have to figure out how to work with them and get that work done. You're problem solving toward that end. So hopefully that gives you a little idea of what you can do as a high school student. Obviously, as you become a college student, more opportunities open up in terms of internships. Maybe an apprenticeship is the way for you to go. But those are skills, those people skills. As much as we love spending time with our individual devices, you need to be able to develop those people skills.
Thanks, Chris. Mark, over to you.
Yeah, I think I couldn't agree with Christine more. I think in general, like, you are able to gain any skill really if you're a student in one of three ways, right? One, you get it through a class. That could be through a class project. It could be through, sometimes there are analytical skills through a problem set that you might do, but you can pick it up through the formal curriculum. Two, you can get it through a co-curricular activity, right? Could be athletics, could be a club, could be an organization. You'll hear lots of people telling you you need to be a leader of this and leader of that. Leadership is important, but impact is just as important. So your ability to kind of say how you move this club, how you move this organization. Then I think the third way you get it is you get it through work of some sort. Now, work for somebody like me is a much more amorphous term that really means lots of things, right? It means volunteer experiences. It means sometimes paid work. It's sometimes unpaid work. It could be an internship, could be a part-time job. At a place like Northwestern, it could be a research experience, right? So all of these are different ways that you're going to pick up the skills that Juliana, you articulated. The key piece too that you have to, that we work with students on is taking then what you've learned and being able to articulate it. Because often we find that students gain many of these skills, but they haven't, maybe haven't's too strong of a word. They need to reflect a little bit more and be able to talk about and tell a story about the communication skill that you gain, the analytical abilities. Because what we find is students talk about experiences, but often don't talk about the skill that underpins them and that they learned that ends up being really important to a potential employer.
Thank you, Mark. I'm just curious, Juliana, do you have any follow-up questions based on what Chris and Mark just shared?
No, I think those responses were really helpful, especially given the circumstances of being a high school student. So thank you for that.
You're welcome, Juliana. Thank you. So we wanted to just show the audience right away the kind of question and answer conversation we hope to have with everybody tonight. Again, the questions are starting to come in. Let's keep typing those in and let's shift a little bit. Let's hear some overall guidance and some perspectives from Chris about the industry and where it's going. We'll give her all the time she wants. Then we'll go over to Mark and do the same thing. And then we'll open it up for questions again. And we already have one from one of our colleagues who's waiting. So Chris, over to you.
All right. I would say an overarching principle here is change is constant. And technology is just going to continue to become more infused in our lives and in our workplaces. You know, at College of DuPage, we offer, over 140 different certificates, along with our associate degrees, which are kind of the bedrock of what we do. And certificates, including what are called micro certificates, can, in many cases, get you a pretty fine job these days. I'm not at all downplaying the value of a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, a PhD by any means, but the way that the world is shifting in some cases to a more kind of competency base, what exactly can you do in the field of IT, in the medical field? You know, we offer a social media, digital media certificate that I think is 4 courses that will get you perhaps an entry-level job with a corporation or a company of some sort that maybe fits your line of interest or passion, and you can at least start. You can start your career in that way. Our programs are wide and varied. We prepare students to make seamless transfers to 4-year institutions. We have a multitude of what we call 2+2 agreements that make it even easier to go from COD to X school in a particular program. We even have some that are 3+1, 3 years at COD, we're talking value prices here, and 1 year at the four-year institution, and then you've earned yourself a bachelor's degree and you're on your way. So, you know, our programs are wide, as I've said, all kinds of health career areas. Our nursing program is very strong. And one of the biggest demand industries these days is healthcare. We've also got robust IT-related offerings. Maybe you want to be a software engineer. We'll get you started on a path to a four-year degree if that's what's required. But again, in the IT area, whether it's cybersecurity or maybe hardware and help desk, you may only need an industry certification, and we're able to prepare you for quite a number of those. So, you know, I often would say to students, take into account your interests, your passions, your kind of comfort level, and do some research into what might be a good first job for you. Many of our students come back after earning a four-year degree. I met with a student recently who's in our HVAC program. HVAC professionals can earn a mighty fine wage. And for all of us who were hanging out at home during the pandemic, you know you wanted your heating system, your cooling system to be working top-notch all the time. This gentleman had earned a four-year degree in art. And art may have been his passion, but at whatever point he completed his degree, realized, maybe this is not the career path for me to make a sustainable living wage. And maybe I can pursue my art as an avocation, maybe as a side hustle. But he was also jumping in on the HVAC. So, you know, I could go on and on. As I said, over 140 different certificates, you know, from hospitality to the arts to graphic design and fashion design and horticulture and everything in between. We've got a lot to offer, but it can be really confusing and overwhelming to students as well.
Chris, thank you so much and helping us make sense of all these choices. And I'm so impressed, always have been, about the range of programming that you and your colleagues offer at the College of DuPage, and in this country, how the communication is in existence for community colleges is great if you go find it. So thank you for summarizing it for us here. And it's now a great opportunity to go to Mark. Mark, could you please give us your perspective? You know, what's going on and what do you see in your crystal ball and why?
Yeah, I'm happy to. And again, thank you so much for including me tonight. Such a joy to kind of be here and talk with parents and maybe even a few students as well in the audience this evening. I think I kind of want to build a little bit on what Christine talked about and talk a little bit more about what employers are looking for and what students might go through as they talk through the process, right? We know that really employers are looking for four things when they're trying to hire people, right? They're looking for some sort of academic preparation to that. Now, Christine's right. It could be a certification. It could be a minor. It could be an associate's degree. It could be a four-year degree. The interesting thing that we even find at Northwestern, it's sometimes the minors and certificates that are actually that point students more towards a career path than a major. A major can be a relatively minor decision in that many employers recruit across multiple majors. Now, there are exceptions to that, right? You think of programs that have very specific requirements like nursing and accounting and architecture, you know, that require certification, you know, teaching that do require structured curriculums. But the most employers are looking across a broad range of majors, and they're really looking towards those minor certificates to help focus and help students earn the skills that they're going to be using very shortly after graduation. So that's one thing they're looking for. Two, they are looking for some sort of relevant experiential education, right? It could be a volunteer program. It could be a shadowing day. It could be an internship. Many of our students, and I kind of peeked ahead a little bit the questions. I hope that was okay, Paul. Many of our students come to places like Northwestern without internships. So by no means do we expect high school students to have internships. But you can find other ways to get exposure to a career through an informational interview, through talking with people, and through connecting. But employers will look for some sort of experience. The other thing they'll look for is they'll look for some sort of co-curricular involvement. And this is probably a little bit more true on the four-year college degrees than maybe some other places. I think you'd see it and again, Christine would be the expert in that. In a two-year degree, you might see it more in volunteer programs, but some sort of involvement where you're having some sort of impact on an organization. Parents come and ask me all the time. They're like, "Okay, Mark, what's the right club? What's the club that they belong to?" And I will say to them, there is no right club. And then they'll say, "I know you're supposed to say that. Please tell me the right club to belong to." And the truth is, find what interests you. If juggling interests you and you want to be part of the juggling club, and you can have impact on that juggling club, and you can show that impact on a resume, that's more important than finding that specific club or organization. And the fourth thing that I think is important, and something that goes throughout our lives really, is the ability to think about, reflect on our career, and articulate a goal. We want students, by the time they graduate from Northwestern, by the time they graduate from any program, to be able to articulate a goal to an employer in a language that the employer understands, right? We don't want them saying, "I'm an English major." We want them saying, "I'm an English major. I'm really interested in publishing, and I'd like to be an assistant editor when I graduate." Now that takes it at a place like Northwestern, that might take us 4 years. In no way do I expect a high school student to come in and say, "This is what I want to do by the time I graduate." So that's about the things that Christine mentioned. That's about understanding who you are. That's what your interests are, what your values are, what your personality is. That's about doing some reflection. That's about talking with different people. And most colleges around the country are going to have professionals like me that are going to work with students. Sometimes it'll be individual, sometimes it'll be through a class, sometimes it'll be in a group, that really will help a student walk through this process of selecting the career for them, and then figuring out the academic preparation that they need, and the experience that they need to be successful. And that's really what gives us, like people like me, our joy, right? We like that. I like the fact that I get to help students from every possible background go into every possible field. I mean, I used to joke that, if the saying "a little knowledge is a dangerous thing," then people in career services are really dangerous people, because we have to have this little bit of knowledge in all of these different careers. But it certainly is what's exciting about the work that we do.
Thank you so much, Mark. And allow me to compliment you and give you some appreciation for the passion that you bring, in addition to the expertise on all the topics that you just shared. You both are such knowledge and thought leader experts, as well as caring, passionate people. And I hope everybody realizes how fortunate all of us are to work in these education settings where we get to help people, as I said when we started, find good jobs and then hopefully find good careers. And I appreciate not only what you said, Mark, but how you said it. And both of you, I appreciate that you've given us a foundation now to begin to go into this dialogue that I was hoping we would establish tonight and get all these questions answered. And I hope nobody's shy. And what I'd like to do is go right to our next question. And we have a colleague who's also from a Chicagoland high school. Lotfi, are you ready? And if so, you're up.
Hi, my name's Lotfi. I'm a senior at Glenbard East. And you were talking about ever-changing skills in like the workforce and as a student who's going into a STEM major, what technology skills specifically should I learn that'll help me be successful? And how will some of these skills help all students in their lives, whether it be professionally or academically?
Thanks, Lotfi. That's another really cool and all-encompassing question. Mark, can we go over to you to start? And when you talk about STEM, there's a lot of knowledge. As Lotfi suggests, there's also a lot of skill building. And he's talking about the long term as well. Can you start us off, Mark, for people in STEM?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk a little bit about that. And I'll share with you, my first major in college was aeronautical engineering. So I don't know, Lotfi, if you're headed the engineering way. I lasted 3 semesters, and I'm in a much better place, certainly, than I am. But I remember living that and living that lifestyle. I think that the key thing is many different disciplines of STEM will have specific technical skills that you're going to have to learn. The general skills across STEM, right, that are really important are things like, we want you to be able to look at data and make sense of it, right, and be able to talk about it. We want you to be able to have an investigative mind and be able to, follow a research method and begin to document your findings and begin to kind of make sense of what those findings might be. It could be in a laboratory setting if you're like a chemist, or it could be in like a more of a natural setting if you're a biologist. I also think that you want to develop the ability, and I think this is really important for STEM majors, to be able to talk about your knowledge and to be able to talk about, if you're in an experimental setting, what your findings are. We work with it in my office, everything from bachelor's all the way to PhD students. And the PhD students are some of the more fascinating people in STEM to work with because they are way smarter than I am, way smarter than I am. But sometimes it takes them sitting down with me to be able to kind of articulate what it is that they have discovered, what it is that they've created in a language that, somebody in a human resources office would understand, as well as in a language that a fellow scientist would understand. So I'd really focus on that. Some of this I would encourage even, our social science and humanities majors. Like, when we think about data and being able to talk about data and tell a story, that's really applicable almost for every major, not just, for the STEM majors.
Thanks, Mark. Chris, what would you like to add?
I would like to add a little plug for COD's engineering program. We do have a built-in pathway to U of I, and we've got students doing great things. One of the fun things that a number of our engineering students do, and this kind of tags on to our earlier discussion, is a lot of them participate in our robotics club. So our robotics team not only designs, but then they have to build their robot that they take to the NASA competition in Texas. The interesting thing that happens is the engineering students, who typically are getting their classes in one building, come on over to the building where my primary office is and show up in our manufacturing lab. And they get to use all kinds of tools and equipment to fabricate their robot. And on occasion, we have had some engineering students say, this hands-on stuff, I love this. I'm maybe going to switch my program into more of a, whether it's more of a manufacturing engineering or to take a slightly different path in a more theoretical vein. So it's a great opportunity for students to do that extracurricular, co-curricular that Mark was talking about. It also helps them to develop some great experience that they can describe and discuss and talk about enthusiastically, not just on a resume, but in an interview as well.
Thanks, Chris. Lotfi, do you have any follow-up questions based on the ideas that Mark and Chris just shared?
No, I think they answered my question really well. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you for being with us, Lotfi. Okay, now, great questions coming in from our audience participants. Let's go to this one. A standard foundational question, not an easy one to answer, I think, but luckily we've got the experts who have all the answers tonight, right? What's the best way to choose a career and then the correct major for that career? Okay, Chris, looks like you got it. We're going to go right over to you. Please start us off.
The thing I often tell students is there is not always one right answer. And you need to, at some point, narrow down the options to choose for now. Not necessarily for the rest of your life. You're not locked in. In fact, the more conversations you have with adults, you'll find out that their pathways maybe were very, very meandering. I won't even start to tell you that my bachelor's degree was in environmental and forest biology. Okay, think about that for a second. Things shift, things change. So much like Mark was mentioning about your interests, your passions, your skills, that helps you to kind of hone in a certain direction. If you're somebody who really likes to do those hands-on activities, maybe you're a crafter, a creator, you want to do maybe some fashion design, or you're really great with graphic design. What does that mean? We've got a cool resource at COD, and I'm going to plug our Career Services Center, which is available to Page residents and everybody who's in our area, to all of you. We serve not just COD students and alums, but certainly you parents and all the residents, if you're a business owner, et cetera. We've got a really great software tool called Career Coach, and it's got loads and loads of data and information that you can source about various industries and careers and job descriptions. What does it mean? What's the salary? What's the typical required education level, et cetera, et cetera. So, start with what you like and what you're interested in, do some research, talk to people, and then start to kind of hone in, because you also want to balance, like I had kind of said before, you need to consider a living wage and you need to consider your passions. Now, some folks will come right out of the gate and say, I want to be a neurosurgeon and I know they make good money and I'm going to stick in there and I'm going to follow the path. That's fabulous. Not everybody has such a clear picture, and yet there are multiple ways to make a very, very good living. Serve yourself, serve the community, get some work-life balance, but it does take some legwork on your part. The great thing is, as Mark said, his office, my colleagues, there are lots of resources here to kind of help you sift through that, as well as your high school counselors.
Thank you so much, Chris. Mark, what would you offer in terms of guidance on these big existential questions? What career should I pursue? What major should I chase for that?
I don't really have much to add. Chris was so comprehensive in her answer. I think if I were to add a couple of things, I do think it starts with understanding who you are and what kind of interests you, and whether you make use of resources that almost every career service office on the collegiate level puts their resources online. Nothing is better than talking one-on-one with somebody, or like Chris mentioned, being able to go in and utilize technology, software, and things like that to help understand who you are. But almost every career service office at a very base level puts information about what can you do with this major online. There's also a great resource called the Occupational Outlook Handbook. It's published by the federal government. It's going to give you basic information about salary data, a job outlook, education requirements that you can go online and kind of take a look at. And it's a common resource that many offices use, certainly in that career exploration stage. I think the other piece that's really important is what I would call test driving a career. Once you kind of get you start with yourself and who you are, you gather your information by going to resources like the Occupational Outlook Handbook, you start talking to people, go visit, call up somebody and say, hey, I'd love to come and have a conversation in your workspace for the day. People love to talk about what they do. I know it's scary for a student to reach out and talk, and ask somebody for their time, but people really enjoy talking about their work. It's probably the second most central piece to our identity after our family. And being able to see what it's like on a daily basis to talk with somebody, you would never think about buying a car without driving it. You would never think about going to a college without going to a website or visiting. Why would you think about a career without seeing the space that ultimately you would like to be a part of?
Thanks, Mark. So, Mark and Chris have both summarized in a really practical way some of the ideas how we can all find these good jobs and these good long-term careers. And it sounds like part of it comes from inside who we are and what we can do. What do we like? What are we good at? Where are we skilled? I bet another part of it touches into our next question, which is saying, hey, what's out there and what are the needs? So this person is saying, what are some of the industries that you anticipate growing over the next 10 years, maybe in the Midwestern US or across the country? I know you've alluded to this a little bit. Chris, you did on WGN today. And Mark, if you want to wrap this up, what things do you see growing in the Midwest and in the US? Chris, let's go to you first.
Sure. I had briefly mentioned in my infamous appearance this morning what is called or referred to as some of the recovery growth industries, healthcare, personal services, things like that, that are just, they're booming. Some of the research I did showed that, you know, a lot of the fields like aviation, construction, cybersecurity, again, healthcare, manufacturing, supply chain, those are all growing now in our area and expected to continue. Those are kind of broad areas. And as I often will tell students, you know, you may be really interested in IT and in technology. As I said, technology is ubiquitous. I saw an article just yesterday about the fact that typically students who say, oh, I want to go into computer science or an IT field, I want to work for Google or Microsoft or Amazon. Well, if you notice, they had some little bit of layoffs going on recently because they had quite the hiring boom during the pandemic. Well, now it said, the article I read was about John Deere and Caterpillar, who are big, robust foundational industries in our area, are looking for super duper tech talent folks. You know, you think, wait a minute, they build those big machines that work the fields, et cetera. No, they've got a whole system that they need fine tech people for. So, I would say kind of broadly, those are the areas that are growing, but never underestimate your type of interest and fitting it into an industry where it could fit across the board.
Sounds spot on. Thanks, Chris. Mark, what are the industry growth gods telling you? Can you give us some additional insights on that?
Yeah, I'm happy to, but I always take this with a grain of salt in the sense of like, we would not have been talking 10 years ago about alternative energy, right? And you know, that is a huge growth area going forward. So there are emerging technologies that we're not even thinking about that will happen in the next, certainly in the 5 to 10 year frame. I think in the shorter term, like one of the benefits that Chicago has as a city is it really has almost every industry represented. Chicago is this wonderful town that has, we aren't known for any one thing, right? We're not, like, no offense against anybody, we're not Boston and the biotech hub. We're not Washington, D.C. and a government hub. We're not New York City and a finance hub. What we have is a lot of different industries to formulate a base from. That's good for an employee. That's good for a career, because what that allows you to do is move across careers. I do think you're going to see everything that went on with COVID, and on the corporate side with COVID, was a lot about issues around supply chain. And I think you are going to see a lot of supply chains being brought back into this hemisphere. Some may be in the US, some may be in Canada, some may be in Central America. But I think that there is a hope and an understanding that we can't just rely on Asia in particular to continue to manufacture everything that we need. And so I think you're going to see some of that happen in the US. That could be mining and materials, that could be more traditional manufacturing. I don't really know exactly where that's going to land, but I think that there is a goal to bring that back to the US. I also think, though, it's really important, and Chris touched upon this, I don't think we should also view education and skill development as a one-time thing. So the skills I'm going to need in 10 years, particularly the harder skills, not the soft skills, but the harder skills, I might need to go back and take a class or two, get a micro credential in 5 years or in 6 years. So I think that, we know the statistics around how often people change jobs, how often people change in industries. I think it's important as a parent to help your son or daughter think broadly about opportunities that are available. Help them figure out where their interests are right now, which sets them up for a good career to begin, and then always be questioning, how else can I continue to develop myself and continue to grow in ways that make me more marketable or more interesting to maybe employers in the same industry, but maybe employers in different industries.
Excellent. Thank you. One of the great parts of this kind of conversation is we get to hear things we can't just Google. And, that's a real added benefit of the community services that Gilder provides, again, that scale this country. But if we want to look on Google for something like one of the questions comes in, what would the salary ranges be for this vital, excellent profession, plumbing? Do you have guidance for how somebody can look up the latest information online? And do you, by chance, the two of you know, what kind of salary ranges are we talking about for professional plumbers in Chicagoland or anywhere?
Well, I would say to start with a career coach. It's going to give you good information. I also have some mighty fine faculty and advisory board members that are well plugged in. I do know that plumbers can do very, very well, and certainly considered an essential worker. I would say, 6 figures in short time, you're there.
Okay, that's a pretty nice range. Mark, any other insights on that?
I can safely say I do not know the salary of many of the career fields that I work in off the top of my head. But again, that's why I'm going to rely on resources to do that. The first place I would start is the Occupational Outlook Handbook. I would start there. I would start to see if the federal government is publishing salaries. I would then take that salary and know that, okay, is that an entry-level salary, or is that somebody with 5 or 10 years of experience? And then the other thing I would say is, okay, if that's a nationwide salary, well, I can expect to earn a little bit higher than the average in a place like Chicago, and a little bit lower, perhaps in an area that's less expensive to live. And that can give me an idea of what that salary would be. And then again, I go out and talk to people, right? I wouldn't go right up to them and say, well, how much do you make? I'd work my way up to that question. But I think you can have a conversation about what kind of career they've had and what and how that salary and the financial compensation for that salary fits into their lifestyle. So I think people will talk about it. They're not going to give you a specific number, but they're going to talk about it in probably a very positive way about what it has allowed them and their family to achieve.
Yeah, great. Okay, so talking with people in the area, Googling, and the Occupational Outlook Handbook, which has all kinds of professions and specific jobs. Do you remember, Mark, does that show data by region or by city? Do you remember?
It is national data. It truly is national data. And it's usually a forecast of about the next, if I remember right, about the next 3 years or so. It might go out a little bit further in that, but it will give you, again, some basic understanding of what are the job titles in these particular areas, what's the basic education requirements, different levels, and then job outlook as well as salary.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
And
Another
I'll just
wise
add
question.
that, sorry, Paul. I wanted to add that, as I understand it, our career coach tool has data from a 100-mile radius. So not too terribly far away from the Chicagoland area. So it's not necessarily a national tool.
Yeah, okay, great. Thank you. Another wise questioner is building on what you talked about on WGN again, Chris. And I know, Mark, you're going to have some insight on this as well. The people-to-people relationship stuff, awesome. It's never going to go away for good. However, now we have keyword searching and algorithms and artificial intelligence that are screening applications and resumes and on it goes. Can you talk a little bit about this automation process for jobs and, maybe even longer term careers? Let's go to you first, Chris, since you're warmed up from being on TV.
Well, as I had mentioned, a key thing to remember are those key words. So if you want your resume to be at least looked at or considered, make sure that you are mirroring some of the words that are in that job posting, so that you're not totally off base. You want to actually, have as strong a resume as possible. Our career services team has some great tools to help you with that. Mark, I'm sure your team does as well. And as my folks said, a good resume will get you through and get you to an interview. One of the key pieces, and I don't necessarily want to get ahead of us, but want to mention that a good resume will get through and get you to an interview. But the interview is really how you land the job. And the vast majority of them are taking place in an environment just like this. So students and potential job applicants need to kind of practice their skills and have a comfort level so that they can, their personality can shine through, that they can articulate their story and their skills and their experiences, as Mark said. So I'll let you add lots more, Mark.
I think that automation as a part of the job search process is only going to continue to kind of increase. And I think that Chris is right. You have to be able to look at the job description and incorporate some of those keywords, maybe in a skills section or maybe in different parts of that resume to help you to be successful. I also think, though, that we should on some levels embrace automation. And here's why. Historically in our field, there were lots of gates that kept applicants out, right? It was what school you went to, it was where you graduated from, it might be what your GPA was. The more we transition to skills-based, the more we use artificial intelligence to do that, we can begin to search for the actual qualities and qualifications that we're looking at. And then things like what school you went to or what, again, your GPA is or what your experience was becomes less and less important. And it really is focused on the qualities of the applicant. Now, certainly it makes it a little bit more kind of scary for the student. And as I always like to remind students is the job search process itself is not an application process, even though it feels like it. It really is a communication process. Right. So this is certainly an aspect of the job application process that feels much like going to college or putting an application in, but you always have to supplement that application process that is going to get screened potentially if you're at a large company by an artificial intelligence with a communication process, connecting with people, talking about your interests and talking about how you fit in to a company's hiring process and hiring plans.
Thank you. Thank you. So I think I'm going to try to steer one question to Chris now, one to Mark. If I am not steering correctly, grab the wheel. Okay. So first, Chris, you have apprenticeships. And one of our question askers is wondering, hey, how do I distinguish myself on my resume or in my job interview to land one of these apprenticeships?
That's a good question. Right now, the apprenticeship programs that we are offering through COD are focused in a few different areas. So we're ramped up well in manufacturing. We also have apprenticeships lined up in horticulture, and we're just launching apprenticeships in IT. So you can just come and talk to us and I'll get you connected. For those of you who may be a little unsure what an apprenticeship is, that is an earn and learn model. So you are hired by the business, by the company, and then they in turn will help to support your education while you are working for them. So, definitely a lot of the foundational skills, interest, etc., are going to be key for making you successful to be hired, but don't shy away because there are some wonderful opportunities out there. And as I said, IT is becoming much more accessible because there is such a need for employees.
Okay, thank you. Mark, one of our participants in the audience picked up on what you said about how important it is to communicate the impact. Do you have any guidance on that? Like, is there a framework or a formula or even a book or some source to recommend on how does one communicate that impact well?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is to think about, when you think about impact, is can you quantify it? You might not be able to, but can you really quantify the impact? So, when you're crafting any entry on a resume, right, a couple of things you want to remember. One is the verb always comes first, and it has to be a strong action verb. Avoid things like helped, right? I don't even like the word assisted in, because a lot of times worked on. Start with those strong active verbs that really communicate what you did in the process. Now, sometimes we do assist, in a process, and that's okay. But a lot of times when you look at those entries on a resume, you can just put a line through those first couple of words, and the verb is sitting right there, 2 or 3 words over, and you can use a word like coordinated, supervised, and then quantify it, right? Even if you got a 15% increase, like so many students now are active and they help small businesses, for example, on social media, right? Well, how many likes did you get? How many more followers did you get? I think a lot of students don't often think about when they start at an organization, making sure that you have good collection of information, good collection of data, and then being able to put that in a simple way on a resume. This isn't about like, we have students come in and they'll say, oh, well, I only increased it by 25%. I'm like, that's great. It's not about tripling it. It's not about, doing those kinds of things. It's just about showing impact. I think as far as books, I'm a real big fan. I don't know if you've ever heard her, if anybody's ever heard her talk of a person by the name of Lindsay Pollock. And I was looking down on my phone trying to Google the exact name of the book. Her original book was From College to Career. It's probably about 7 or 8 years old. I think I'm dating myself. It's probably about 10 years old. I think on my mind, it's 7 to 8 years old. And then her most recent book, and I was trying to get the title, is really about helping college students as they leave and go off into the workforce. I think she's great. I think the other book that often gets cited is What Color Is Your Parachute? Which combines that knowledge of kind of that self-exploration with then some really practical tips on how to write a resume and how to kind of be successful. But I'll put also a plug in for what Chris is talking about too. Nothing beats the ability to talk to somebody and to connect with somebody. And one of the real benefits of the community college system in many places in the US is that it's completely open to people in the community to be able to get those resources. And that's something that if you went to talk to somebody privately to get those resources would cost you hundreds of dollars an hour.
Okay. Sage guidance. Thank you. And I'm going to ask our panelists to kick it into high gear and go for even more content in summary form so we can get through the rest of these questions in 8 minutes. Okay, you ready? All right. What's a good time for a college student in a community college environment or in a 4-year environment to really meet with somebody on staff and start to talk about these paths? Do you do it after orientation on day 1? Do you find your legs and do it on year 2? What's good timing to start thinking about career paths?
I think from my perspective, we like to work with students either spring semester of your first year or freshman year or fall semester of your sophomore year. We used to like to say the sophomore year, but there are a couple of career paths that start earlier now. And so we do have to kind of get them in. But most important thing is enjoy your first year at college, try out different things, different classes, different clubs, and then come in and we can kind of do that exploration work.
Thank you. Chris, do you have guidance on timing?
It depends. If you're anxious and wanting to talk with someone right away, do it. We have career coaches and counselors and program advisors, sometimes even as you're considering a path. For example, architecture. We have an amazing architecture program and our students transfer to 4-year schools seamlessly. But if that's really what you want to do, you need to talk to us before you start so we make sure that you've got everything lined up, not to scare folks off. To Mark's point, if you want to kind of just come and try, you can actually click the box that says undecided. And when you're ready to maybe make a decision, maybe talk to one of your professors or any of the other resource folks that we have. So there's not a bad time, but earlier is better.
All right. All good times. And let's shift into timing of trends in the world, environment, and how does one make the environment better? Sustainability, clean energy. There's all kinds of ideas. And one of our questions is about, are we seeing categories of jobs that look promising related to the environment? And this person's wondering, from a technical perspective, what can one do in that space? And another angle might be like from a more policy perspective. So who wants to go with this one? Mark, how about we go to you?
I'm happy to. I think that this is an ever evolving field in a positive way. If you would ask me this question 5 years ago in a technical space, you largely, if you wanted to work in the environment, you largely left college and you went and worked for oil and gas for a couple of years before you transitioned. That slowly is changing on the technical side. Keep in mind that a lot of engineering degrees, when you graduate from undergraduate, you end up in quality control, you end up in process, manufacturing spaces. If you truly want to do R&D, you're typically looking at a little bit more of education to do that. And because so much of the environmental space straddles the production and the R&D work, it sometimes you need that additional education beyond kind of the undergraduate level. That being said, there are plenty of manufacturing opportunities and opportunities on the environment side. Key thing for any student who's going into that pathway is definition, right? That goal setting is really important. True on the policy side, true on the tech side. There are also some environmental consulting firms that you can do that help companies reduce, say, their wastewater and help companies and organizations reduce their pollution. So there's that kind of pathway too. I've already talked too long. This is supposed to be the lightning round.
It was rich though. It's very rich. Chris, anything to add on the environment, tech side or policy side?
A little bit. We've got a horticulture program that's got sustainable urban agriculture. That's been growing and of great interest of late. You know, one of the occupations with a high growth predicted over the next decade, wind turbine service technicians. Now, we don't have a lot of wind turbines here in DuPage County, but go a little bit west, a little bit north, a little bit south, and there they are. So I think as I know on a statewide level, there's going to be more dollars and funding and emphasis on green energy, clean energy initiatives. So stay tuned, more to come.
All right, great. I'm going to read this one literally. How does a high school or a college student learn to be an enterprising, constructive thinker and move away from operating in a regurgitation mode that is easier rote, typically used in the formal education world? How do we basically think critically is how I'm interpreting this question. And you're both smiling. So in our last 2 minutes, you decide who goes first.
I'll jump in. I have a lot of frustrated faculty who teach our higher level courses, which forces students to pull together all the pieces that they've learned and apply them. I would say it takes a good faculty member to encourage the students to take that leap, and students have to be comfortable with discomfort, that you don't always know the answer. You don't always have it on the tip of your tongue, but you have to work through the process and understand how to pull those pieces together and think through in order to make it happen.
Thank you. Mark.
I look towards, in addition to what Chris said, I look towards interdisciplinary education offerings across different departments, across different areas. Take classes outside of your area of interest, because while it might feel very kind of restricted and rote, I can guarantee you an engineering class is very different from an English class, which is very different from a psychology class. Many colleges and universities also have incubators on campus. And so that allows you to get involved with people, other college students who are starting their own companies and beginning to think in an entrepreneurial way. And those usually have non-faculty staff who support those students, and they bring in alumni from outside to talk about entrepreneurship and to talk about kind of thinking outside of the proverbial box.
Yeah, if it's okay with both of you, I'd love to throw an opinion in on this too, from my perspective. I get to work with graduate students here at Kellogg, Northwestern's business school, and I am constantly begging them to do exactly what this person is asking, to, of course, honor the reality of testing and assignments for grades, which can lead to better career success in the short term with jobs, probably not in the long term though. So I beg them, after they get their good grades, to think critically on top of that. What do they disagree with that was covered in a classroom or an experiential learning activity? What interests them more than what was on the syllabus? And look at competing perspectives, disconfirming evidence, so that you can think more holistically and analyze more thoroughly and come up with your own point of view. So how likely is it that a student in high school, college, or graduate school of any level is going to do this extra work? I don't know, and I'm not here to make a judgment, but I am here to say, if we've got to play the grade game, and the term used here was regurgitation, I think that's an unfortunate reality. So if you want more, the opportunities are limitless for you to guide yourself into critical thinking through different kinds of self-study. My 2 cents. Okay, our last question is something that I think a lot of parents and care providers and guardians wonder when the high school and or college student is at home during the summer. Sometimes the older person in the house wants them to get a summer job. And sometimes the younger person in the house is not so keen on doing that quickly. What are your thoughts on the summer job and its value and the part-time job? Mark, you first.
I think it's really important that you think about doing something in the summer, right? I do think it is, particularly after your first year. Like, we have many students who feel they're behind because they come back in the fall of their sophomore year and they haven't had an internship. And I think that's, our data says the opposite, right? Less than 50% of our students are going to get an internship after their first year. They get them, and they have no problem getting them after their second year and their third year. So getting that summer job, particularly in that first summer, I think is really important. Having a job on campus, I think, is also another way to do it. Paul, that's, when you're talking about part-time jobs, I'll be honest, in our office, students answer the phone at the front desk. They are our primary reception. So they have to learn how to triage everything from a major employer who's calling to one of their peers to a parent who's calling and asking questions. So I do think that's also really important for them to learn how to kind of build skills and kind of do the things that teaches them the communication abilities that you might not get until you get into a formalized internship.
Thanks, Mark. Chris, over to you.
I would echo Mark's comments. I would say, even for high school students, if they're of age and have some interest, a summer job is wonderful. One of the key things that we hear across all of our industry advisory councils is they are looking for folks who know what it means to have a job, to show up on time or show up early, to be ready, to come back every day. Those sound a little base, but they're important. And those are the kinds of skills that students can practice even as high schoolers in the summer, even for, a 4 or 6 week experience that will help prepare them as they go forward. And yes, we have wonderful student workers all across campus. We couldn't function without them.
Exactly. Where would we all be without them? And in honor of the World Cup, we have extra time. One last question just came in. Then we're going to turn it back over to Gilda. I'm going to read this one verbatim. Chris mentioned a few growing fields: aviation, construction, manufacturing, supply chain. I'm missing just 1 or 2 that she mentioned. If possible, could you mention them quickly?
Let me get to my notes page. Holy cow.
All right.
Cheat sheet.
All right.
Let's see.
Thank you for being so flexible on the spot. Mark, anything you want to share? Oh, you're ready. She's ready.
Was it healthcare?
Cybersecurity, healthcare. Yep. Yeah, those were the others. But certainly technology and healthcare in all their forms.
All right. Excellent. Well, allow me to give you a standing applause here. Awesome. Chris and Mark, again, as I said in the beginning, we know how busy you are at all times. Thank you for carving out the time, sharing your insights, and giving us such practical guidance across the whole range of finding jobs and having the careers that we hope are fulfilling. Our hats are off to you. And I want to acknowledge what I would call our producer of this whole show. And Jerica, take a bow. Thank you for making this happen behind the scenes. It wouldn't happen without you. And Gilda, over to you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you so much, Mark and Chris and Juliana and Lofty. Thank you. You know, it's the mission of the Glenbard Parent Series to help parents, you know, love the child in front of them. And I think when we talk about the opportunities that are maybe varied and non-traditional, it's really, really understanding the child. You talked about how we need to know, help the child with their interests, their passions, and their skills. And we as parents, to help them, we have to know our child as well. And so, and loving them, you know, as I often say, not the child that you expected, dreamt about, imagined, hoped for. That child right in front of you, that is our child, and we want to help them be as successful as they can in school and life. And so I'm so grateful to you for the time that you've given us to help us guide them along the way. Thank you, everyone, for coming and spending this hour with us. Again, this will be available on the YouTube channel for the Glenbard Parent Series. Join us next week with Andrew Solomon, Inside Depression, and everyone. This is where we go hug the children. So thank you so much, everybody. Have a great night. Thank you for your time. Take care.